I think those transfers you mentioned are so shambolic for a number of reasons. Pound for pound, that might be the worst transfer ever.
INEOS aren't going to do that. You can see there's a focus in terms of we want a player that's young, got potential and got sale on value.
Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is Off the Bar. I am joined by Scotty and Jay, and we're going to be looking at Manchester United's transfers this summer, and not just the players, although we will be getting into that, but how things have changed, what INEOS have done, the things that they've implemented that have changed not just the types of players we're getting, but the way we are getting them as well. And is there some indicators finally that United are doing things the right way? So first of all, Jay, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm excited for the... You know me, I don't really care about the football and results in games and all that. It's boring. No one gives a toss. Oh, we've won or we've lost. Who cares? I care about transfers.
Transfers is
That's what I live for. Yeah, that sort of period between like September and November. Don't care about that. Don't care about the bit after January. It's all about the transfers.
It's perfect. It's
That's
the best
all I live for, man. That's it.
What's better than that? Scotty, how are you?
I used to love transfers, Joe, and then the Glazers really took over and I got fed up a bit because we were linked with everybody. But it was good back in the day where you didn't really know players and you'd only see them on the back of a newspaper.
Yeah.
Who's this Ronaldinho? And you didn't have YouTube to check him out.
Yeah. Who's this Eric Cantona?
You know? And
Who's this Andy Cole?
And then when you did have everyone at your access, from journalists to football clubs to your Fabrizios, it's like we're getting everybody and it's just completely turned me off. So now I'm sort of I don't know where I am.
The golden era. There was that spell one there under Louis van Gaal where we went turbo, and it was crazy because we were getting linked with players and you think, we're not going to get Radamel Falcao. That's ridiculous. And then he was there. We're not going to get Angel Di Maria. Shut up. And then we did, which was great for about 3 weeks until none of them were any good.
Yeah.
And then we had to sell them all for a loss.
I know. Di Maria was good for about 2 months.
He was player of the month, wasn't he? It's like Memphis. I think he did a similar thing where first month he was like player of the month and he was really good, and then he just fell off a cliff, both of them.
Leicester won it, that goal.
Yeah, the Leicester one.
The Leicester goal, that was his highlight.
Yeah.
It felt like that scarred
It was, wasn't it?
didn't it? But we're going to get into a little bit of a comparison. So I want to start with a bit of a rundown on where we're up to this summer, and then compare it to, I think Ten Hag's first summer is the best kind of comparison point here, because that's when they were trying to impress the new manager, getting him the signings he wanted. I want to look at a few different things, the wages, the type of players we brought in, the links with different players. So let's start with this summer so far. Obviously, United have already signed Joshua Zirkzee. I think it's somewhere around 42 million euros for that deal. Done, signed, sorted. Then we followed that up now with Yoro as well, Leny Yoro, who looks like he's going to be signed for, it depends, somewhere in the region of anywhere from 50 million euros to 70 million euros, it seems, in that ballpark, depending on add-ons, etc. But two things there. One is 23, one is 18. That's an immediate thing. The other players that United have been linked with are very strongly are Matthias de Ligt, who's 24, Manuel Ugarte as well, who I believe is also 24. So it's very much a younger generation of players that were being linked with this time round. Just before we get to comparisons, what have you made, Jay, of not just the players in particular, but the profile of player that we seem to be going after so far?
It all sort of seems to make sense. Buying in players that are young, maybe have got another level to reach. Also, if you're going to be sort of a cold hard capitalist, have got some resale value if it doesn't work out, or if they do want to move on. Well, you think they would because of their age. You think they're not going to sort of, it's not like we're buying 29 or 30 year olds. So it does make sense. And the Yoro one's quite exciting because he was linked with Madrid. But just, I think I mentioned this on Transfers Live, the fee is okay. It's not like I don't think we've got a massive bargain
here. It's not a bargain,
where you go, he's got a year left on his deal, we paid 60 million euros for an 18-year-old. I think it just makes sense. And again, with the Joshua Zirkzee one, good player, what is it, did you say he's 23 years old? Yeah. 40 million euros is about right for a player that scored 11 goals in Serie A last season, which is a decent return, but it's not like it's Harry Kane numbers or whatever. So it's all quite sensible. The reason it's exciting from a United point of view is we don't do sensible transfers. We do chaotic, idiotic, moronic transfers that don't make any sense whatsoever. So when you just see us acting like a normal football club, it's hard not to get a little bit giddy about that.
Yeah. What do you think, Scotty? Because I think overall, I'm someone that can err on the side of almost sort of blindly positive. Like anything that happens, until it's proven wrong, I will look for the reasons why it's right, if you know what I mean.
Right.
When we sign a Casemiro for 75 million quid, I go, he's one of the best centre midfielders of all time. This is a good thing. And then maybe 18 months later we go, actually, that was probably short-sighted. I think you're, in terms of managers and stuff, maybe a little bit more cynical than I am at times. I don't know if that would be the correct word to use.
That's how Jay had put it.
I don't know.
I think that's an understatement.
Okay.
And he wears it all like that. I don't know. Come on, you wear your cynicism like a badge of honor.
I'm not trying to insult you, but I'm just saying
there's nothing wrong with that.
You tend to maybe notice things that I will gladly skirt over. How have you assessed INEOS and their sort of transfer policies and the dealings in around the club so far this summer?
Well, I think you made the point before about the board previously were trying to impress the manager, which I don't think that the board should try to do for a new manager incoming. I think what INEOS are doing now is very targeted, whereas previously you like food, you do food on Sloppy Joe's podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to that after this.
Thank you.
The Glazers and Woodward seem to go into a restaurant and look at it like it was a buffet, and then end up coming out with a 3-day-old sushi, whereas this looks like they're going for a targeted, I know what I want to eat, I'm going around Europe, I want this, this and this. If you're charging me too much money, then I'm not buying it. If you look at the Anthony deal, and we just carried on, whether that's to impress the manager or whether that was because they didn't want to look like they couldn't afford, it was very much still in the ethos of Woodward's, we can do things in the transfer window that nobody else can. Yes, because nobody else would pay that amount of money for.
We can do things in the transfer window that no one else thinks is a good idea.
Yeah,
that was basically what it amounted to. Wasn't it?
Pretty much. And then maybe if you look how we've dealt with this Branthwaite deal, and they said, well, we're not paying that. We'll go and buy Yoro, and we might pay more money, but we feel like it's a better investment. It just feels like there's a better target, better structure. I don't know if they're all identified by the manager. All the signings seem to make sense for my, who we targeted and who we've signed so far. My concern is what's happening with the centre of midfield, because there's like gaping holes there. I'm great for defence, but for me, last season, as well as conceding and scoring goals, we didn't have anyone in the centre.
No, that was a big issue, wasn't it? I do think, like you've said there, it does seem more targeted, and I will come back to the midfield because I want to mention Ugarte and some others. But if we look at some specifics from that 2022 summer, which I think, like you said, it was Ten Hag's first year, and it seemed like it was Man United trying to impress him rather than let's work together to actually create something that's sensible here. So you look at the players we signed, it was Malacia for 15 million euros, Eriksen on a free, Lisandro Martinez for around 57 million euros, Casemiro for 70 million euros, Anthony for 95 million euros, and Dubravka, which was a 2.3 million euro loan, but I don't think we need to sort of focus too much on that as a backup keeper. But Anthony and Casemiro are the ones we talk about all the time, just, to hit the bullet points on them quickly. Both signed after we'd lost the first 2 games of the season, so we were in panic mode. We tried to sign Frenkie de Jong all summer, failed to do so, and didn't seem to have an alternative to him until the attempts to sign him were found to be fruitless. That's when we went, oh shit, we need someone else. It wasn't like we've got 2, like you said, with Branthwaite, we've got Branthwaite and Yoro and De Ligt all going at once, and we'll get 2 of these 3 depending on who we can get a good deal for. They were sort of back to back to each other. Then obviously you've lost the first 2 games of the season, the window is about to close, you're in desperation mode. We end up paying, as I said before, 95 million euros for Anthony, which is, one of the let's say least valuable or least good value signings in Premier League history, and 70 million for Casemiro, who was, I believe, 29 at the time. Do you see, Jay, can you imagine transfers, either of those, but certainly the idea of doing 2 deals like that, can you imagine that happening under INEOS? Do you have a sense of we won't find ourselves in that situation, or do you think, well, who knows what might happen between now and the end of the summer?
No, I think those transfers you mentioned are so shambolic for a number of reasons. You said like we're trying to impress the manager. I think it was almost desperation, because let's not forget as well, you're right about De Jong. We also wanted Adrian Rabiot. We tried to get that deal done. Apparently John Mercer flew over to meet his mum's his agent.
That's true.
Couldn't get that done. Then we were in for Arnautovic, let's not forget as well. But there was a bit of a fan backlash, which I kind of agree with. I get it. But that's not how you should base your transfer policy, on whether people start saying nasty things about him on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then we ended up getting Anthony. And one of the reasons we overpaid for Anthony was because Ajax were in a strong position financially, because we'd given 57 million euros for Lisandro Martinez. And I know they'd sold other players as well, but they didn't need to sell Anthony, so they could play hardball. And it was just so desperate and weird and stupid. And I think me and you, when we was on Transfers Live, when INEOS was sort of visiting Carrington, there was reports that Sir Jim Ratcliffe highlighted the Casemiro deal as being an example of what you shouldn't do. Buying a 29-year-old who, yes, he's one of the best central midfielders of the last sort of defensive midfielders of the last 20 years or whatever, but there was question marks about what level he was at. Was he sort of slightly winding down somewhat? were Real Madrid that desperate to keep hold of him? I think there was a couple of games of that season where he'd not started. So it was like, did they still consider him first choice? Did we need to go that high to get him? Plus his wages were ridiculously high. Now we're still struggling to get rid of him. And I think if Saudi Arabia or a club from Saudi Arabia don't come in for him, we will struggle. So I don't see INEOS doing these deals. I think these deals are shocking. And I know Casemiro, I was with you. Casemiro's such a good player and won all 5 Champions Leagues. As a fan, you're going to go, yeah, great, we've got Casemiro. But the club needs to be better than just fans. You need to be a bit more savvy than just buying players that the fans might go, oh yeah, that's great. You need to look at it a bit more long term and go, does this make sense? Is this financial sort of package worth it? Because let's not forget, one thing that's missing with all this talk of that summer transfer window is it left us with no money whatsoever for January. So when Cristiano Ronaldo fell out with the manager and decided he wanted to leave, the manager had no money at all to bring someone in to replace him. No. So we had to get Wout Weghorst on loan and brought in Marcel Sabitzer on loan as well. I know that's slightly, that's a different position, but we were skinned basically in that transfer window. I know we've always got money, but we couldn't have any funds to replace Cristiano Ronaldo because we'd spent so much money in the summer transfer window. So it was, if it wasn't for Lisandro Martinez in that window, it'd be the worst window ever.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to, I'm not dissing Cristiano in the time last because they've done okay, but it would be awful.
It would be horrendous, really, wouldn't it? I think you look at the wages you mentioned before, go through some of the wages of the players that summer. Casemiro, £350,000 a week.
Unreal.
Which, again, though, this is the thing, and how it all sort of follows on and follows on. That now is obviously, I think he's one of all, if not the most highly paid player in the Premier League, maybe behind Haaland and maybe Salah, but I think he's right up there, or De Bruyne as well. Maybe.
I think De Bruyne is, one of the top earners.
But he's United's highest paid player. But when he signed, David De Gea was on the same or more, and Ronaldo was on 150,000 a week more. So at the time, you're getting probably the third most sort of famous big name player at the club. So it would make sense to put him on the third most in terms of money. Now those two players have left. De Gea looks like he's maybe on the verge of retirement because no top clubs seem to want him. Obviously, Ronaldo's 39 and he's doing what he's doing. But that Casemiro wage looks more ridiculous now than the situation we found ourselves in when we gave it to him. But that only highlights how poor we were at giving the original contracts to those two in the first place.
You're right in the sense of, I understand the Casemiro wage.
Yeah.
Even if I don't agree with it, I get, you've got a player from Real Madrid who's in his 20s, he's joining a club where he won't be the top earner, and he's coming into a club where he's one of the most successful footballers of all time. And he's vital to you because you're desperate for him. You need him to come into your club and help fix the mess that's already started. I understand it. One thing I didn't understand in that transfer window with wages was how Anthony went from 25k a week at Ajax to getting almost 1,000% pay rise or whatever it was to 200 odd k at Manchester United when no one else was even in for him. It's not like he went, well, if I don't go to United, I'll go to Barcelona and they'll give me this money. His options were stay at Ajax on 25k a week or come to United. So why did we offer him 200k?
But again, you would say, I mean, if I'm playing devil's advocate, I'm Anthony's agent or manager or whatever, I'm going to say, you just, what? Is this your second most expensive player ever? You're going to give him 60 grand a week? That ain't happening.
It's just, do
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I get your point. An agent and a player should, I'm not Anthony's biggest fan. I don't blame him for wanting more money. It's not his fault.
Yeah.
But I think, pound for pound, that might be the worst transfer ever. When you look at what he's given us, his wages and his fee, and I don't like saying this because I think people get, you slag off Anthony a lot, and he has given us some good moments, and I hope he does come good. But I honestly think you struggle to give him away now.
Do you mean worst United transfer ever, or just overall?
I think there's a consideration for both.
Yeah,
in Premier League maybe, and United, because yes, he did okay when he first died. He's done nothing for about 18 months. No. In all honesty, he's got issues off the pitch, which have tainted him in terms of if you're trying to get rid of him. I think people will be looking at that and going, what's happening with all that? Yeah. His attitude stinks, slagging off the manager and whispering to rival team, his teammate Gabriel Jesus against Arsenal just absolutely rattled me. He's given you, 2 goals I think last season maybe?
Yeah,
3 goals, sorry, one against Newport, one against the Scousers, one against Burnley if memory serves. But he's just not good enough. And he's on this massive wage, and it's like if you're him, you're probably happy to get paid 200k a week rather than taking a massive pay cut. And who's even going to come in for him? with everything that's going on.
I think you mentioned it there, though. It's not his fault because
No, I don't blame
if
it.
anyone else is in that position, and then
Yeah, I would.
you're Anthony's agent, you try your arm, don't you? Because what's happened is they've left it so late, and they keep trying to increase the money to get him from Ajax. The agent's not agreed any sort of wages at that point. He's like, all right, how much do you really want him? Okay, you're going to pay Ajax this amount of money. He's like, well, we're in a strong position. But if you look at everything there, it's like that old saying, isn't it? If you fail to prepare to fail. And that's what happened with the Casemiro situation. He was third choice, if even that, because I don't think that summer there was any United links, because everything was Frankie de Jong, oh no, we're getting Rabiot.
Yeah.
And then it was, nobody saw the Casemiro deal, nobody at all. And when it came through, everybody was elated because of the profile reputation of him. But hindsight's a wonderful thing. And yes, he won the Carabao Cup that season, but I mean, come on now, is it worth everything he's put us in a financial situation when we're moving forward? It's just a complete contrast to where we are now. I just don't see INEOS getting anywhere near the start of the season before us having all our players that we want at Old Trafford.
And hopefully, if we are to sign someone late on, it's because someone who didn't look to be available has become available, not because we're still desperate to fill one of our main priority positions. Like, they're two different things to me. One is we want two centre-backs, a midfielder and a striker. Let's say we get them sorted by the start of August. Great stuff. Then, actually, someone who we didn't think would be available this summer has become available. Let's move a few things around and make the deal. That's different to me than, just ruling out anything. But if we're going, we've only got one centre-back, we've got Zirkzee and we can't get a midfielder, we need to panic. That would be the problem for me. That just waiting to sign your priority signings, that's the real issue.
Yeah, it's just, when it got to that sort of around that fee for Anthony, I don't understand why United didn't think to themselves, we could spend this money and get someone else. There's players that probably aren't available, but if you offer 90 million quid for him or 90 million euros, they are available.
Yeah.
Even Premier League clubs, some of the clubs in the Premier League would probably sell you a winger better than Anthony if you start offering that kind of money.
We could buy
That's
two
what I mean.
younger players.
You know what I mean? If you went to Villa, for
League,
example, I'm just pulling out a team and went Leon Bailey. We're not selling him. We'll give you 90 million euros. I'm fucking all right.
Yeah, they're selling.
Yeah, and he's a better player than Anthony. It was bizarre that United didn't thought it was Anthony was the only show in town.
Yeah. Just in contrast, then, looking at Zirkzee, who is reportedly on around £56,000 per week, which I think is nearly double what he was on in Italy. But of course, I mean, it puts him at around a third of the weekly wage of even Christian Eriksen, who was the lowest well-paid of that window's players, except Dubravka. Actually, maybe Malassi was a little bit cheaper as well. But of the major signings, Eriksen was on the least money, and he's on around a third of that, which is obviously improvement, isn't it, massively?
Yeah.
I mean, go on, Scotty. Yeah.
No, I agree completely. And the problem with putting players on these astronomical wages without actually proving their worth, I think there should always be a sort of sliding scale, especially at Man United, but most football clubs, that you get an increase depending on what you put out on the pitch. Yeah. Like if Anthony comes on £100,000, but yet has a fantastic season where he scores, I don't know, double figures in assists, then you get a little bonus. Yeah. This is what Zirkzee is on. He's on 56 now. He knows if he plays better, he's going to get an improved contract as time comes on. It also shows me that that's a player that's not just coming for wages. Okay, it's increased from where he was at Bologna, but if he'd signed for United last season, he probably would have got 100 grand a week.
I know.
He would have done.
He's been a bit unlucky, hasn't he? He had his best season last season.
Leny Yoro is another one.
Yeah.
He's on reportedly around 144,000 a week, which is obviously a lot more. Yeah. But again, still cheaper than Eriksen, obviously cheaper than Anthony. Mason Mount, I believe, is on around 250 grand a week. It's a lot less than that, and obviously way less than Casemiro. And to put it in perspective, the 60 million or 50 million pounds ish that we've paid for Yoro, plus 5 years of his 144 grand a week, is around 95 million pounds. So his wages and his transfer fees are around 95 million. If you divide that as a yearly wage or as a yearly total, it's less than we pay Varane just in salary. So you look at the person he's replacing, we've got him and his wages for the next 5 years for less than we've been paying Varane per year, which to me makes a lot of sense. That makes things a bit more stomachable.
The one thing that makes it stomachable with Leny Yoro, because it is a lot of money for an 18-year-old for wages, 140, and I believe it goes up every year as well. So I don't think he's going to end up on 144k a week by the end of his contracts. I think it goes up each year. I don't know the scale and how much by, but it does rise. But he's got one thing Varane hasn't got, and that is sell-on value. Like, if in 3 years he's giving you an indication he's not going to sign an extension or he don't want to stick around, and he's had 3 good seasons, you might consider selling him, and you probably get more than your money back. With Varane, we kind of knew when we bought 28-year-old Raphael Varane, who'd had a couple of injury issues, the chances of you getting that 44 million quid or whatever it was and paid for him back were almost non-existent. And I think that's the one thing that you can kind of sort of not justify. I don't think it needs justifying, but it softens the blow, shall we say, of spending that kind of.
It's forward thinking, isn't it? Because we've said this loads of times, and we spoke about signings. Is that there's never been any selling value for Manchester United players for the last 15 years. I think Dan James is the one we got the most profit for a player that we've sold on. But with I know, yeah, but with them, I think with the Yoro wages, it was a must to get that deal over the line, that we had to sort of go in higher with the wages. That makes sense for me. Compare that with the Anthony things. There was nobody else in for Anthony, so why are you doing that with the wages?
And also,
couldn't agree more.
I know 144 grand a week is a lot, but he's not one of the top earners at United. There's a handful of players who are on more than him, and even take Casemiro out because I don't think he'll be here, but Mount's on more, Rashford's on more, Bruno's on more, Sancho's on more, I think Luke Shaw's on more, like obviously Anthony's on more, Eriksen's on more. Like, he's not like top 2 or 3 at United.
It's got to be bad as well. Like, if you're, let's say Leny Yoro, I don't know if he will or not, but let's say he ends up starting every game, playing every game, and you're playing week in, week out, or Zirkzee ends up, let's say Højlund suffers a dip in form or gets dropped or injured or whatever, and you're playing week in, week out, and you might look over on that bench and see the likes of Casemiro, the likes of Mount, the likes of Anthony, the likes of Eriksen, the likes of Sancho, sat on that bench, barely getting a kick, who are earning double, triple, or even 4 times what you're on. It's not great, is it? So it's just INEOS needs to, I think, keep going in this direction until we get to the point where we've not got a bench full of people earning £250,000 quid a week.
Do you not think with that though, having them sort of mercenaries on the bench, knowing that them wages are attainable if I put the shift in? So if you look at Sancho, hasn't performed, still on great wages, but if you're a Zirkzee, you bag 20 in a season, comes down for contract negotiations, you're like, no, sorry son, how much is he on?
I don't think it'll happen though. That's what I mean.
Do you think it's going to be? Do you think they're going to cap it? That's going to be the.
I don't think INEOS will do this anymore. I think, like, I get your point. You think, oh yeah, well, if I keep going, I'll get 350k a week like Casemiro is. I don't know if that's the case. I think you'd have to, do something special. I don't think INEOS are going to do that, because as well, PSR is a big thing in it. Like the money's changed now on what you can spend, and United have been sailing close to the wind. I mean, let's not forget we got fined, didn't we, for breaking those rules, not to the extent that Manchester City have, of course, but I don't see us going down this route anymore. No. And look at what INEOS have done. Everything they've done has been quite sort of with half a mind on keeping the finances on an even keel, like laying off a load of staff. I mean, obviously I don't like that. I don't like to see people losing their jobs, but things like that, stopping people getting a free ride to Wembley. I know it seems a bit petty, but it's about this whole, we're trying to save some dough. So I think it's hard to do those kind of things if you're still going to dish out 350k a week contracts to players that are under par.
Yeah, I think with Zirkzee as well, it's like, there was a point, do you remember, we're now going back 5 or 6 years, but there was a point where Harry Kane, I think, had won like 2 Premier League Golden Boots, and he was on like 80k a week. Do you remember? And when United had Paul Pogba on 250, Martial on 200, like he was one of the best players in the Premier League on like a quarter of what some of the other big name players were on. And it's like, United always, we just assume that we have to pay everyone the most, but like 56,000 is a massive pay rise for Zirkzee. Yeah. He's taking a massive jump in sort of club stature. He's coming to a team that, I know Bologna had a good season last year, but he's got a much better chance of winning trophies consistently and all that sort of thing. So you don't always have to sort of tease everyone with 150 grand a week minimum just because it's Man United. Like, think about what they were on, and like you said, Jay, and you said as well, like, if they're coming in for a negotiation, let's say he scores 20 goals next season, you can probably take him from 56 grand to 100 grand without upsetting the apple cart around him, without him now being on this crazy money, and you've given him a fair reflection of how well he's done. If he starts on 150 and then he gets 20 goals, you're going to go, well, I've improved on the player I was, I want 250. And I think that, like you said, we're not going to keep doing this. And we have to show people that the 250, 300, 375s that we've been giving out, that those days are done unless you are a club legend.
I think it's easy as well when you've got a new ownership. And it's easy to say that because you're not dealing with the same people.
You set your stall out early doing that.
If you're going to a negotiation, you're saying, well, you've just give in for it. And you say, well, we didn't. That was what you inherited. And also as well, another point on like the likes of Zirkzee and other players coming in. Joshua Zirkzee comes into Manchester United. He'll earn so much more money now from brand deals and other stuff if he does well that he would never.
Yeah, there's more than
like,
just.
And it probably as well if he does do well. I think it'd be hard for Koeman to ignore him for the Dutch team. It's just it snowballs, doesn't it? There's several reasons why being at United is just beneficial to you, other than just your basic wage. I call it basic, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And he'll get goal-related bonuses. He'll get trophy-related bonuses if we get top 4. A lot of them have in their contract it's like a 20% pay rise.
Yeah.
Like there'll be ways for him to earn more than 56 grand a week.
When we
with all
win
those things.
21, he'll get a massive bonus.
Yeah,
so and to look forward to it.
And you hope we players signing for that, the signing not just for the money as well, because I think what's been lost with the sort of later stage of the Glazers ownership post Ferguson, we lost the sort of. No, we're not paying you that. You're playing for Manchester United. It's equally as an honour as it is for a wage packet for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It became a sort of strange air of vulgarity about it. We'll just splash the cash, and that became a totem of success. Oh yeah, because we can do that. We can spend that amount of money on Paul Pogba. Yeah, great. What's it doing for you? Do you know what I mean? Like that became where we're Manchester United. Look at us splashing the cash. But you know, it became a level of hubris as well with deals. Well, when we can't get you, we can't get. Here's all the money you want. Oh shit, we can't win anything because we can't sign anybody else. And now it seems like there's just this real sort of focus and strategy.
Yeah, it did. It seemed like, as a club, we got to a point where we almost revelled in the ability to pay these wages, rather than looking at them as a structure and as a football club. It was like, look how great we are. We can pay all these people loads of money because we're Man United. We were like bragging by paying people this amount of money, rather than thinking of it, what it actually is a hindrance to our ability to get top players in and more players in.
There's no greater example than Alexis Sanchez in that, because that became like a European Cup win because Man City didn't sign him, but we managed to look how much money we're paying him a week. Wow, look at us at the end of the season winning nothing.
Again,
You know what I mean?
you're right, and there's just a lack of due diligence.
Yeah.
The assumption was that he was poor for Arsenal in his last month there because he'd fell out with the manager and fell out with his teammates, but he was in decline. You were watching a player, and yet no one had done the due diligence where they go, has he lost a little bit of pace? Has he lost a little bit of edge? It was, he's just spiced, dummy out. He'll be fine when he gets another club. And he wasn't. He was terrible.
No, he was worse than ever. Another thing I want to talk about, to move on a little bit, is we've talked about the players specifically. We've talked the differences in types of players and style in terms of age and wages and all that. But another thing that seems to have happened, and I want to talk about this in 2 different ways, is the noise about who we're rumoured to be looking at. Every single year I've done videos for Stretford Paddock, there has been one of Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Neymar, Gareth Bale, like Paul Pogba, whoever being linked with Manchester United. There's always a mega name linked with us every single summer, even if we're laughing it off outside Old Trafford saying Lionel Messi ain't coming to United. But remember the Neymar rumours a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
The Messi rumours a couple of years ago. Like Mbappe rumour, like it feels like it's the first time where there is so much less noise around United. You know, every year someone will do a list of the 78 names or 130 names United were linked with this summer. I feel like we've been linked with about 9 people so far.
Yeah.
And 2 of them have signed, two other of them we're definitely in for, and then there's been a couple of left backs and centre mids here and there around that. It seems so much more focused. And the first thing I want to talk about is how it seems that INEOS are much more targeted with who they're into, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the stuff there with the Neymar potential signings. That only happens because there's a possibility of, you only get the media coverage because of the hysteria that's going on and the lack of focus. Like, who are United going to pay too much money for this summer? Because the Neymar wouldn't have seen that much of a ludicrous sign had United given 400 grand a week and paid a ridiculous money for PSG.
That's a good point.
But now it's like, it's unbelievable. It would be unbelievable from a reader's point of view or a viewer's point of view to link United with, I don't know, a Messi or whatever. Because INEOS aren't going to do that. You can see there's a focus in terms of we want a player that's young, got potential and got sale on value, and that seems to be the profile across everyone that we're linked with or we seem to be signing. I don't think is there a global name that you could see actually sign for Manchester United that is plausible.
I mean, you do the news most days, Jay. Have you seen any of that this year?
No, like Scotty was saying, like you always throw United into the headline. So now it's like former United target or ex-United, because they can't say United target when it's one of these big names because we're just not really in for him. The biggest name, and don't laugh at me, but in terms of the fee and the stature of everyone sort of brand recognition, who knows who he is, has been Ivan Toney in terms of a big name that everyone goes, oh yeah, you know, a lot of money and whatever. But that's not really happening. That's more a line in the Athletic, I think, saying that United, we're looking at him. Doesn't really feel like there's much concrete there. I haven't seen anyone, because, you know, we've been like you, Joe, I've stood outside there, and even if it's a case of, I don't think this has happened, but there are papers that saying we're interested in Neymar, or we're looking at the Messi situation when he fell out with Barcelona or whatever, you can go, okay, yeah, probably what happened, but United would be that kind of club that would throw a load of money at it. Now there isn't anyone. No. There's not anyone.
Well, Benzema was another one, wasn't it?
Benzema was another one, yeah.
I think De Ligt is quite a big name, but again, the situation he's found himself in, it's not this sort of mega signing, and he's young. There's always been a 30, 32, 33, 34-year-old that United have been sort of considering.
Looking at one window, I know you're going to get to it, or sorry, no, you're not going to get to it, ignore me, but that one window where we got Varane, you've got 3 of the biggest names in the world that came at United that summer. Yeah. In Varane, won 4 Champions Leagues, one of the best defenders on the planet. Jadon Sancho, who was 36 goal involvements in 39 games at Dortmund. Everyone was raving about him. He was like the next big thing, part of that, trio of him, Bellingham and Haaland that everyone loved. And Cristiano Ronaldo.
I've never heard of him.
Right, I know he's sort of let the side down with, no one really knows who he is, but like all 3 of them end up at Old Trafford. Yeah. It's crazy, like, to get 3 signings like that. And now, and to be honest with you, other than Varane, I don't think it worked out.
You mentioned before due diligence, even like what was happening with Ronaldo. Why were we signing? Were we looking at Varane's injury record? What we're going to get there? Will Sancho's personality fit in at Old Trafford?
Did we just sign Ronaldo to stop him going to City? And I know you make the point that as a fan you're glad we did, because you think he would have won the Champions League there.
Yeah, I would.
But
I do, so.
In terms of footballing potential, it didn't put us in the place we needed to go to, did it? And another side of that, and you touched on it before, Scotty, but I just want to expand on it a little bit, that I wanted to talk about with this sort of less noise thing. Part of it is because we're less targeted, but also that there is a big part that the press don't think we'll believe it anymore. There seems to be a momentum and a change in gear about how people are starting to think and talk about Man United already. And I have to give INEOS credit for that. The way they've come in, and no longer will United fans believe we're signing Neymar. I know obviously it wouldn't be Neymar, but whoever the person is, this sort of impossible mega signing that it's just not going to happen. Like Vinicius Jr. You could imagine a world where 12, 18, 24 months ago, Mbappe joins Real Madrid and some relatively strong rumours come out that Vinicius Jr. spat his dummy out and that United think they can get a deal done. I could imagine that happening. Now, we know no one would believe that. And I think the fact that the press and us as fans are starting to look at United in a slightly different way. Yeah. These are just the small steps of momentum that, when Newcastle went from being fighting off relegation to 18 months later, they're finishing top 4. That wasn't just because they got loads of really good players that all happened to be perfect. Momentum comes from lots of different angles when it comes to a football team. Some of it is how the public view them. Some of it is the confidence in the dressing room, the confidence of the fan base, how the media treat them. Like the ball starts rolling in loads of different ways. And I think the fact that it seems like so far anyway, and obviously things can change and we'll be here if they do, but so far people seem to think United are serious again is a massive thing for me. How we are viewed publicly really does affect how you start to feel about the club and the energy and the momentum behind it. That to me is a big part of this.
It certainly is, and I think United fans just aren't going to buy any more bullshit. And INEOS have set their stall out, and it's a complete contrast to what we've had previously with the Glazers running the transfers coming in. Listen, when Ferguson was there, we used to sign maybe one marquee signing a season. It was usually the best player in the Premier League we get in. But by and large, Manchester United were renowned for making superstars as well as buying them, and that's what I want to see from INEOS, and it looks like that's going to be their MO, is that we're going to create more superstars with this approach rather than go on the continent, splash a load of cash and hope to buy one.
Yeah. Do you think we're seeing that a bit, Jay? Do you feel like the media are, at least for now, and obviously things can change overnight if you buy a dud or you spend 70, if Yoro plays 40 games in the next 5 years and leaves. But do you think at the minute it seems like people are going, well, hang on a sec, United, they're behaving differently here and we need to keep an eye on this, we need to respect this a little bit?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from INEOS themselves. We've seen him, Jim Ratcliffe was given, I think he did a whole day of media rounds talking about United and his plans, and he's not really giving the indication like Ed Woodward, we can do things that other teams can only dream of, we can go out and buy superstars, whatever. He was kind of the opposite, and he's saying we're going to be sensible. It's going to be a different approach. And he's said that, and he's been public about it. And if you look at the moves he's made in terms of the backroom staff, Dan Ashworth, Jason Wilcox, Omar Barada, you can feel that it is going to be a little bit more, I keep saying the word sensible, but a little bit more sensible. That's what it's going to be like. So I think it's harder, like you were saying, for the papers to push a real, even semi-believable narrative that United are going to go in for big stars, because PSR is massive. That's something that we've got to deal with, to the point of we're having to sell players just to buy players that we need. Like, I don't talk about Mason Greenwood, he was going to go anywhere, but there's talk that maybe we're going to get rid of Aaron Wan-Bissaka. There's one of Scott McTominay, there's a couple of other players that, in an ideal world, the club might even say we'd keep you, but we can't, because we've got to balance the books a little bit more if we are going to buy players that we definitely need. So there's that. There's the public face of INEOS as well, where they're coming out and saying, look, we're not doing the kind of things we've done before. Plus there's the other cost-cutting exercises they've done. Everything sort of gears towards United not going for those big names anymore.
Do you think that, looking at it from another angle though, how many superstars do you actually see that are going to be available moving between big clubs this summer? There's probably the Osimhen deal maybe from Napoli he might be on the market. But how many marquee signings do you actually see going between clubs this summer?
I don't think there's tons, but I do think that almost no matter what, they'd be like, we've been linked with Ousmane Dembele almost every summer for the last 6 or 7 years. Like, it just happens. Like, players like Kingsley Coman just keep popping up. These big names who have been at big clubs. Osimhen was another one that United were linked with for a long time. Like I said before, the Rodrigo or Vinicius Junior at Real Madrid, someone would have planted that seed by now. Certainly Rodrigo, who's kind of seen as the lesser of those kind of trio at Real Madrid. Maybe those deals aren't possible, but I think we still would have been led to believe they were. Even look at De Jong, like, that deal wasn't really possible, but it's no less possible this summer than it was last summer, or the year before, should I say. And yet, now it doesn't feel remotely on. Like, we're not entertaining stuff like that.
If INEOS weren't here, you'd hear a lot more noise around Frimpong.
Yeah, that's another
100%.
one.
Yeah. You'd hear that constantly. That United are in for Frimpong, United getting rid of Wan-Bissaka, you get Frimpong. That'd be doing the rounds constantly. But I think people look and they go, United aren't doing that anymore.
Do you think this might be coming as well from leaks within the club about who United are after, or agents? Being we're not doing this anymore because United aren't going to,
I don't mind that. If INEOS can play the game, because the game isn't just obviously on the pitch, we know that, but even with transfers, the game isn't just we go about our business, and if you happen to hear a rumour, then go ahead and write about it, journalist. It's like, what do you leak? Who do you leak it to?
Yeah.
How do you guide the narrative around
adding leverage to your position?
Yeah. And it feels like we're actually doing that for once. Like, we've made it clear, we all believe it, whether it's true or not, that INEOS will stop bidding for Jared Branthwaite. They might be, in their own head, he might be our Anthony, where we go, secretly, keep it between us, we have to he's the one. But no one thinks that. We all believe we're willing to walk away. Whereas in the past, we didn't control the narrative very well. It was leaks and rumours and this, that and the other. Now it feels like the message, the PR side of it, they're very good at as well. And I suppose if you're, a tech billionaire, or not a tech billionaire, an industry billionaire who runs a maybe potentially kind of upsetting business like INEOS, where they are pumping petrochemicals here and there occasionally, PR would be something you're pretty well versed in.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that people like the fact you're Britain's richest man, rather than resent the fact that you're a grotesque billionaire who's doing bad things to the environment. I feel like they are a bit more savvy than the Glazers, who were just sort of, isn't daddy cool, and we've got all his money now and we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, it's how, when you mentioned it as well, how accessible he's made himself to the media. I mean, when have we ever heard of that? An owner make himself accessible for, I'm having a media day just for him, which has been refreshing. What I want to ask is, how do you feel like that's going to transfer, excuse the pun, over to fans' expectations then? Because, we lost 2 games, but then we signed Casemiro and Antony, and as much as YouTube showed us that Antony like a world beater, the reputation of Casemiro, it gives you a belief just in them signings that we can go on to do amazing things. Because we're sort of boxing a little bit more clever there. What impression does that leave upon the fan base? Galactico sometimes does give you that impression.
It gives everyone that.
Every year he's coming out, we're winning the treble.
It wasn't just those signings, to be fair. I think it was like the perfect storm as well, because those signings came in, and even before, certainly before Casemiro kicked the ball, we then got our act together as well, didn't we? We beat the Scousers, and it was like, okay, this is like a real air of positivity. The only difference I see with this one is both these signings are, they're not sort of, I know Leny Yoro looks like a future world beater and he's a generational talent, but they're not right now superstars in the way that Casemiro was. Casemiro was arguably the best defensive midfielder on the planet, certainly one of the best of the last 10 years. Yoro could become one of the best centre-backs. Zirkzee very, very talented young lad. I don't think anyone's arguing he's one of the best attackers on the planet. No. He's just a good backup probably to Rasmus Højlund. So whilst I think there is expectation, I think they're tempered slightly by the fact that these signings so far have been sort of not quite at the highest level, and also as well, United have just finished 8th. Like that's difficult to ignore. So while fans are going like, "Oh, we should be able to kick on, we should be able to do," I think a lot of fans are thinking, even if we kick on, we might get 4th.
And I think if we're to look at that in a positive light, do you know how people are saying now, like, it's going to be difficult for someone to take over from Gareth Southgate because the expectation, if you're to improve on him, if you're to come in and show you're a better manager, winning something is the most clear and obvious only way to really do that, kind of in a binary, are you better on the pitch, yes or no? Whereas for INEOS, to improve on 8th, United's worst ever Premier League finish, they've got a right little run up at that, haven't they? Like we can finish 5th next season, which 2 years ago would have been a disaster, and still look like they've done a good job. And I don't mean we should mask a bad job in a small improvement, but I think if this is to take 2 or 3 years to really get the ball rolling, then they can be improving during that time and not have everyone kind of piling on them or having the sort of public opinion turn on them immediately. We can improve as people like Zirkzee, who's gone 11 goals last season. It's nice, but if he's going to turn into a 20-goal a season player, it might take a little bit of time to do that. And the INEOS have got almost like a free run at next season, because how bad would we have to be worse than last year? Would just be unthinkable, really. Would you imagine?
The bar's as low as it's ever been. Yeah, really, it literally
it
is the lowest bar that
and it's everyone. So fans now know other clubs as well. They know other teams, and you look at it and you think, can you imagine City or Arsenal dropping out at top 4? Probably not. Then you've got a lot of teams are in a similar position to us in it. It's like
Spurs,
Villa, Chelsea, Scousers, ourselves obviously. It's all like
Newcastle have a good year.
Newcastle, sorry, I almost forgot about them. Yeah. There's a lot of teams who are in that mix.
We definitely could get top 4.
You want us to be at the top of that pile.
Yeah, you do.
That for me would be a successful season.
One last thing as well, just the age of the players we're signing. Zirkzee, 23, Yoro, 18, both of whom will be at their peak or younger by the end of their contract, let alone the start of it. Look at the teams who have gone from doing what United have done, which is the odd trophy here and there, and finishing inside, outside, top 4, back and forth. In the last decade, it's Arsenal and Liverpool who have bridged the gap from 70 points a season to 90 points a season, that sort of really tricky gap that United haven't been able to do. And both of which, Liverpool in particular, how many games and how many years did Robertson, Alexander-Arnold, and then whether it be Matip or Van Dijk, Henderson, Salah, Mane, Firmino, how many years did they play and grow together? 4, 5 years, where most of them were playing most weeks. Like, you look at United's team, it's you in, you out, new manager, you're gone, you've retired 36, 34. Like, look at Arsenal now. They've got Saka, Martinelli, Saliba, Gabriel. You've got, they're changing their keepers a little bit, but you've got Jesus in there. You've got Zinchenko, who are all they're at an early part of that stage, but you'd expect most of them to still be there in 3 or 4 years' time. Certainly that core.
Yeah.
Whereas United, it's been Rashford and Shaw and Bruno. Basically, that's it. Even in the last 3 years, most of them are coming in and coming out. Wan-Bissaka's been there, but not always first choice. Maguire, the same. Like, loans of 35-year-olds, 37-year-olds, 33-year-olds. We need to get players like Zirkzee who can actually be here for 4 or 5 years together.
When you say it like that, it sort of indicates why we've been a decent cup team.
Yeah.
Because that's a cup team kind of mentality.
Yeah,
it's like that. It was like, used to be like under Ron Atkinson when I was a little kid. And it's like loads of signings, loads of changing, loads of, revolving door going on. And you'd get good cup runs, you'd win trophies that way. I know we've not always won trophies, but we've been to finals, semi-finals. We've had
6 games, innit? You only have to win, innit?
Yeah, so. And now recently we have won trophies. So, yeah, I think that is it. And it does feel like, you look at it now, Yoro, Mainu, Garnacho, that's long term. I know they can still do job now. Rasmus as well, yeah, good shout. Then you've got Onana, you've got Rashford, sort of mid-20-year-old players.
How old Martinez? On a 26?
It's same age as Rashford. So there's a core there of players that can play for at least the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Some of them, like the likes of Manu, obviously longer.
Yeah.
And then there's 1 or 2 where you might go, okay, I think personally he'll play to his mid-30s, Bruno. I think he's that kind of guy, but you know, we'll see what happens. Shaw's another one. I think he's 28, maybe 29. Maybe,
I don't see him playing to the
maybe,
mid-30s
yeah,
at the
maybe
top
because of his physique as well. Maybe, maybe not. So there's a couple there, but even Arna is what, mid-20s. For a goalkeeper, he's very young.
I think you need that.
Yeah.
And even going back a little bit further to City, look at some of those players who were there just year in, year out. Company, Zabaleta, Fernandinho, De Bruyne, not all at the same time, but like
Silva,
David Silva, Aguero, Sterling.
But that was built on a core, though.
Yeah.
You know, that was always built on a core, and that's before Guardiola was there. This is like Mark Hughes' first season. That's where you sort of saw the core being built, and that's what you hope this is now. Because Guardiola's only really had to tweak with age, or if players wanted to leave and stuff. It's like, all right, well, that isn't working. We'll just get that one player there, not depending over the odds. So it looks like hopefully now we're building a collective rather than hoping on the individual, and an aged individual that's a mercenary by any other name.
I know, yeah, it's mad, isn't it, when you think about how we've been doing it. Like, we've always been trying to like top up to win a title when we're like, the glass is almost empty here, and we're just trying to put a little shot in to finish it. Like, where's the rest of this? Ronaldo's great to win you a league, but we ain't got any sense.
It's like when you were like, we bought Berbatov, and it was like we already had a team.
Perfect.
And Fergie wanted like a little bit of the icing on the cake. Do things a little bit differently attacking wise. We'll get Berbatov in. We've been buying like players, like you say, like Berbatov, when we haven't got a team. No. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we've bought this marquee sign or this player, but we haven't got anyone to provide him the assists he needs. We haven't got a defence that can keep clean sheets or a goalkeeper knows what he's doing. It's just been insane.
Well, look how many shirts he can sell.
Yeah, that's it,
That's
innit?
true. Right, that's going to be all from us. Thank you for joining us for Off the Bar. Thanks for coming on, Scotty. Always good to have you. Thank you, Jay, as well, of course.
For having us.
Thank you for watching at home. Get your thoughts in on what we've seen so far. Is there anything we've missed? Are we blindly positive? Are there some negatives to what we've seen so far from INEOS? Get it all in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. And are things starting to change under INEOS at Manchester United? We'll see you in a bit.